Hello, and this is 5 curly career questions, and I'm super excited because it's in person. I'm here with Peter Cross. Peter and I met a couple of years ago socially, and we both live in Spain now. And Peter is self-employed. He is a consumer expert, a retail consultant, a change maker, communicator, and speaker. And 3 companies' names that sort of popped out at me when I looked at your LinkedIn were L'Oreal, Portas, so Mary Portas, and more recently, John Lewis. And you're also writing a book now.
I am.
Yeah, pretty good. So here are your 5 curly career questions. The first one, can you tell me about a time when you experienced a career transition or a time when you felt stuck?
I don't often get stuck, actually. I'm quite good at sort of getting my way out of it, but I certainly felt stuck at the end of my second stint in corporate life. I was at the Cartier Group. I've been in Paris for a while, and I was back in the UK, but I was definitely not in a job that I was loving. And I met a lady in my neighbourhood. I became a mate, Mary, and she probably unstuck me, actually. And together we ended up creating London's first and foremost retail marketing agency. But that was against the good advice of my father, who was like Unilever for life, 40 years, and said, don't do it. So it was not an easy transition, but definitely one that in the end worked out, I think.
Thank you. Second question. Our priorities change over time. In our 20s, what was important to us is that changes when we get to our 30s, our 40s. What one way have your priorities changed?
They've probably softened rather than changed. I've always been very driven, sometimes just too driven, Helen. So I've been, I've compromised and sacrificed a lot during my career. Which I've only learned later, really, as is often the case. But I think I've certainly realised that drive and that ambition isn't necessarily going to give you the happiness. It's a bit of a false friend, and the happiness comes from the people that you surround yourself with, and the true fulfilment doesn't come from this fleeting kick, adrenaline of the career. So that's probably shifted my priorities over time.
Okay. And that's reflected in the work that you're doing now?
I think so. By being self-employed, I can pick and choose a bit, rather than somebody else picking and choosing for me.
True. So what are a couple of key resources or pieces of advice that you have had along the way?
I remember this was at L'Oreal in London back in the early 90s, and I was a cocky thing, and I had a mentor at the time, terrific mentor, a lady called Pamela, who run the hairdressing technical institute downstairs, and she'd asked me to do this presentation, and I hadn't really prepared for it at all, and I ruined the presentation. And at the end of it, I was called into her office, this huge big office on Kensington Church Street, and she said, Peter, you failed to prepare to fail. Ooh. And that was it. Ooh. And then basically pointed to the door. And this was an indomitable, sort of formidable woman. I've always liked strong women, actually, throughout my life. And I ended up sort of, leaving with my tail between my legs, but never, ever, ever failing to prepare again. So that's certainly one. And then I think someone told me at some point in my career to always remain curious. Yeah. Because as you get older in life, even from your 20s and 30s, your life every day can start to get smaller. Yeah. I don't like that. I don't like that food. Don't like that person. Don't like that. That office. I don't like all this stuff. And all those decisions of closing things down mean your life is more little. So that drive to always keep pushing back the boundaries of life and remaining curious, I think probably has been a mantra.
Like that. So I hate, loathe and detest coriander. And so there's always something in a work context, in the professional world, that is the coriander equivalent. That moment, your coriander. So, what's your coriander from a work context?
What's the matter with coriander?
I hate it. It's disgusting.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's actually a thing. A medical.
The Wall Street Journal ran a thing, cilantrophobia. Yeah, years ago. Yeah, no, it's a thing. Hate it.
Cilantrophobia.
Anyway.
I can think of other things but my coriander, to play along with the coriander thing,
thank you,
would be no. The whole notion of no.
No, that word, no.
Well, for what it means. So as a customer experience person, no is the worst word, for customers. Let's see if we can work this together. It doesn't have to be yes, but the whole idea of closing things down. Yeah. And in a professional context, people who say no, if you're particularly dealing with groups, is the hardest thing to deal with, because you've got, no doesn't take you anywhere. No, it's the ultimate. It closes the door and closes the quietest voice in the room down. Sort of, so if I'm facilitating groups, and the no's, the naysays, are again my sort of deepest problem. So probably the whole idea of no would be my coriander.
Okay. Thank you for playing along with that question. So I lived for a long time in New Zealand, and there is a word in the Māori language called koha, which is a gift. And so if you could give a koha or a gift to someone right now going through a career transition or feeling stuck at a crossroads, what would your koha be?
It's got to be self-belief. It's confidence, self-belief, because we should be, I guess, Helen, our own greatest cheerleaders, in life. But often we're not. Often we're throwing stones at ourselves. I can't do that. I couldn't. And particularly at these moments of crisis that you're describing. So if I can give any koha to somebody, I think it's got to be the belief in yourself and the belief to trust your instinct and intuition about the way forward. So that'd probably be my koha.
Very powerful. I like that. Thank you. So those are your 5 questions, but there is one more, because stealing the idea from Stephen Bartlett, there is a mystery question that each guest leaves for the next one. So your mystery question is, what's your secret passion?
I don't know, it's secret. Might be secret to you. But my secret passion is dirty nails. Not literally dirty nails.
Okay. Thank you.
But what happens basically when you're a gardener?
Oh.
And when you're young, gardening is the worst. When you're 12 and you've been dragged around some rubbish old garden centre, it's the most boring thing in the world. But now, and particularly here in Spain, where you can garden earlier in the year, and the melons are bigger and the courgettes are bigger, and there's a lad from Manchester growing your own melons. That is, you know what I mean? That is
blows your mind.
You can't grow melons in Manchester, so that does blow my mind. So I don't know if it's secret or not, but probably that's certainly a passion that I've recently discovered that is quite joyous.
It links with the happiness piece, right?
It does.
It does, nicely. Okay. Peter, thank you. It has been my absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.